Hey friends, in today's video I'm going to talk about the things that I'm excited for this season, Season 19. The background gameplay is not going to be very important, so don't pay that any mind. Consider this like just an audio only video, so put this on if you're doing some chores, that type of thing. So, let's talk about the season. There's a competitive playlist revamp, new weapons, and a few small sandbox tweaks that should make PvP more exciting. So I'll start off with the sandbox tweaks. Behemoth Cryoslide now allows for something like Rhyme to be slotted, whereas previously you didn't have the fragment amount for that, so it should make Behemoth more enjoyable to play. The only Behemoth build I use at the moment uses Dead Man's Tail, which brings us to the next one. Dead Man's Tail had like some aim assist change that now registers headshots if you shoot the head directly. Previously, you had to aim like slightly above the head to get it to register a shot at some distances. Now it's super consistent, and I would say a little too powerful. So I like that it registers proper shots, but I do think that the overall range of the weapon should be dialed back some so it doesn't just dominate every range possible with that accurate of hipfire. It's just way too powerful. Next up is the Invis radar change. This makes me more inclined to play Invis, though I still wish that the game lighting and or the transparency of Invis was tweaked to accommodate this. So for those who didn't know, you're going to be losing the outer ring of the radar when you're invis. I think next week is the change. The final sandbox tweak I want to mention is the Gear Falcon Hauberk exotic chest piece. Previously, you got extra damage coming out of invis. Now you get followed arounds. So this creates an interaction where you can keep looping wall hacks, kind of like Forsaken. So back in Forsaken, if you crouch with Way of the Wraith, got a headshot, you got wall hacks. Now you have to have Gear Falcon Hauberk using a void weapon. This should create some very interesting and powerful builds, but I kind of like the overall balancing scheme that Bungie's moving towards for this, where they brought 3.0 subclasses that are powerful on most fronts, but weaker in others. So in 2.0, for example, we just had perfect inner accuracy, so you didn't necessarily have to use Heat Rises on Dawnblade to shoot people in the face. Now, if you want that same type of consistency, you need to sacrifice your exotic for Astrocyte First or Wings of Sacred Dawn. Voidwalker used to be able to consume its grenade to get Devour. Now, instead of doing that, it costs your exotic slot, Secant Filaments, and you use your Rift to get Devour. Look at Gear Falcon now. In 2.0 Way of the Wraith, you crouch to get a headshot to get wall hacks. Now you have to use your exotic slot and it has to be a void weapon. Now that I mentioned the sandbox tweaks, let's move on to the weapons, starting with the Manticore exotic SMG. This is one where if you're grounded and you shoot somebody, you build up a meter that lets you float in the air kind of like a warlock. And what I'm excited to do with this is use it on Blink subclasses. Fun fact, in the original Destiny 2 beta, you were able to float out of a blink similar to the way that the Manticore will enable it. So I'm very excited to explore this on both Warlock and Hunter Blink. The next weapon I'm excited about is the Rose hand cannon that's shown in the background gameplay. This is a very low stability, low range roll, and it's pretty much garbage, and it's still really good. So I definitely recommend getting one of those this season. What makes this unique is it's a lightweight frame. It adds 2 invisible tiers of mobility and a sprint bonus, so this allows hunters to have a much more aggressive stat split build, and it allows warlocks to use like transversive steps and go really, really fast without having to use a lightweight shotgun. I much rather would have a lightweight primary. So yeah, I'm definitely going to go for roses. If you want to get a rose, you have to play your 7 comp placement matches. Before you do that, I recommend picking up that Shaxx quest on all 3 of your characters, and then I think every future week, you just play 7 games and a rose drops. I think it's 3 per week. Anyhow, what I want on it is high range and stability, ideally close to 60 on both. For the perks, I want slide shot on the left column, snapshot on the right, and I'll keep any roll I get with rangefinder in case I need it to compete. Because hand cannons do struggle against SMGs right now, and everything will struggle against DMT as more people figure out it's amazing. So, the next weapon I'm excited about is the Stay Frosty Pulse. I think this will be a dawning item or whatever the Christmas event is called. Nightshade Pulse Rifle, if you remember what that is, was one of my most used weapons, if not my most used weapon in early Destiny 2 back on console. And then moving into PC, I still used it a lot, but I ultimately moved to like Anti-Up Sunshot. Stay Frosty is the new version of that, and it's a stasis element, so in the kinetic slot. What you need to know is that it's a lightweight pulse, similar reasons I gave for Rose, and you can also get moving target on it. Kill Clip no longer kills 10 resilience targets, but I will pair it with Desperado probably instead of Kill Clip, just so I can have some meaningful lethality. Not to say that even hitting head body is still bad, but you know what I mean. The next weapon that's lightweight is Prolonged Engagement SMG, and I think it's going to provide some AE builds for Gemini Jester, where it gives me like perfect float and frenzy. I'll talk about that more later. This is in no specific order, by the way. Hung Jury. It's going to be a Nightfall weapon. I want to go for box breathing for double primary loadouts or for fusion rifles. There's a new glaive that's a higher impact frame. It's called Judge of Kelgaroth or something like that. Just higher damage glaive builds. Pretty much replaces my glaive in almost every build. Next one is the Exalted Truth Hand Cannon from Trials of Osiris. This is going to be a stat monster, and it's going to have 3 type of builds I could go for. I could go Gemini Jester Aerial Effectiveness Cannon with Perfect Float and Frenzy. I can make it anti-flinch with the Suro Synergy Origin trait and 96 stability. Or I could go for Slick Draw and Gut Shot and prove to people that I can sometimes aim. Prove to myself. Anyhow, Gambit Snipe, Albruna D. It's a 45 zoom high impact, and it can get Air Assault and Snapshot. Air Assault got a tweak where if you get a kill, it's now plus 30. And it still maintains its native plus 10. So all total, putting everything together, you have 38 AE with extended, Air Assault, and Icarus Grip on the Snipe. So if you use it with Wings of Sacred Dawn, that's another plus 50. And we're looking at 88 AE without having to use another way to activate it. So that is pretty consistent, but not 100% consistent. So although I'm going to go for this to use with Dead Man's Tale Wings of Sacred Dawn, I'm probably still going to pop Heat Rises. And it sounds like it's redundant, but sometimes I might pop Heat Rises, get a kill in the air, get plus 30, then Heat Rises dissipates, and I still have the capacity to hit 100% consistent shots after that. So yeah, if there's a way to build into AE, I usually do it. Next up is the Path of Least Resistance Trace Rifle, for no other reason other than it has enhanced hipfire grip, and it also has gut shot. I know that sounds weird, but the way that trace rifles work is they're extremely accurate. So maybe I want to build into just body shotting with it with something like Bow Tracer, something that gives me a damage buff, and yeah, just never aim at the head. Could be effective. I don't know. Moving on, we got Heritage Slug, also enhanced hipfire grip that comes from Deepstone Crypt. Weapons are craftable now. And finally, the Long Arm Scout Rifle, just to cosplay as a cowboy, though it does have hipfire grip, not enhanced, and it does have high impact reserves, which is interesting because you load in 2 bullets at a time, so you could purposely empty it and then combine it with Radiant. Moving on, other than weapons, the new Crucible director looks pretty clean, but quick play still has its problems. The map pool is weighted towards the large maps. I had a session the other day where I got 11 large maps before I saw a small map like Endless Vale. Even a medium-sized map would be a breath of fresh air, but it's mostly just large maps. And the Clash game mode, as opposed to Control, exacerbates how slow these large maps play, and I know SBMM does add to that, but listen, I like where SBMM is right now, but some games will require hard meta to prevent a Mercy due to odd team balancing as a result of the queue times trying to be shorter, as a result of the population variance throughout the day. And it might be low because Destiny is in a low point right now. So I don't want to have a knee-jerk reaction to SBMM. I would say if I had Javelin 4 and Endless Veil popping up more often, I would probably enjoy this current SBMM. But as it stands, it definitely has its problems and has a lot of room for improvement. Speaking of that, Comp's going to echo this, so Comp also has its problems. It needs more incentive to play. The main problem is it has an uncapped rank and or is missing a leaderboard. So if we had uncapped rank and a leaderboard, that would be incentive enough to play. In addition, perhaps a visible matchmaking rating and rank to be displayed at the same time. I understand it gives accelerated rank gains to get you where you're supposed to be, but there isn't really a differentiating factor between, let's say, 2 Ascendant 3s or worse, a high MMR Gold 3 who will be a future Ascendant 3. It's like you can't tell who the better Ascendant 3 is just by looking at someone's rank. And I hope that they integrate more features that you can show that type of thing off. Every other request I would see to the comp playlist infrastructure is really just catering to extrinsic motivation. So I think it's smart for Bungie to not have come out with cosmetic rewards initially so that they could accurately assess the population of intrinsic players and to tune the underlying systems accordingly. If there was to be additional rewards, I would like at the very least an emblem that shows your division. I also think that 3 roses per week might be too few, considering how likely it is to get a rose that can't really compete with SMGs. It really does have to be juiced on all fronts. Not to say that it doesn't have incredible perks all around, except maybe Vorpal Weapon, but to get everything lined up, it's going to take a long ass time. So perhaps an additional drop every 100 wins or so. Sounds excessive, but if you love comp, you're going to be in there anyway regardless of the rewards, so a high number makes sense. Let's talk about the actual game problems now. That is maps and modes in comp. Showdown makes me not want to queue the playlist whatsoever. Showdown makes me sad because it promotes the worst aspects of Destiny's PvP. Since revives remove points, a player has to get a full team wipe. If you dig deep and get a crucial 2-piece trade, then the last enemy alive revives both, and it's like you did nothing. Now nobody wants to commit to any plays because the punishment for failure is too high. Individual picks feel meaningless. The winning meta is Citan's Rampart, the shoot-through barricade, with Revoker, the sniper rifle that returns bullets for missing, and a Storm Grenade that tracks your opponent because it's the most non-committal effective loadout, and it counters itself because Revoker ammo economy refunds a bullet if you hit a barricade. It counts as a miss. Storm Nade's also the most effective anti-revive zoning, so all this combined makes any other loadout feel ineffective. By contrast to Showdown, Rift shows the most promise and potential, but it still definitely needs improvement. The presence of an objective creates a healthy game flow, and there are layers to decision making and movement is promoted. 3v3 feels better structured than 6v6, though the big cons of this mode are that revives are still snowbally. It prevents a back and forth tug of war, to say. The spawn system overall lacks depth and is jarring, and it feels like spawning is trying to prevent a spawn death, which ultimately takes away your chance to defend in the first place. Respawn times overall also feel very long. For example, on Disjunction, it's a massive map. You either spawn extremely deep in your base, or you spawn in the middle of the swamp, still too far away to defend, so either way, you just can't do anything after the initial team wipe. So, also, sides need to flip each round, gotta mention that. Ideally, Rift should take 2 separate team wipes to score, and the current map and rule set and spawning and whatnot prevents that from happening. Let's talk about survival. It's still status quo. It's okay. One universal complaint is that maps have a favorable side without the game mode rotating it, or like an awkward objective or opening spawn placement. A good example of this is the Rusted Lands cap point, where one side pretty much is on the cap point and the other one has to run a marathon to it and also go through 2 deadly choke points when they're realistically not going to be able to contest Sight and Revoker. So, yeah, that's the thing. Despite all that, though, I am thankful to have a competitive playlist that has somewhat meaningful divisions again, and now I have a place to try to win. It's a great start, but it needs more, and it needs it quick. Let's talk about content that I'm going to make as a result of comp now. So this is what I want to work in. I'm going to put gameplay post-commentary. I'm not live commentating in comp. It's going to be too difficult once it appropriately matches me. Then I'm also going to add multi-point of view, team gameplay, and freelance with communication. So I will use the in-game mic. I know, scary, unheard of, nobody's done that. Finally, I will offer coaching via VOD review and build crafting stuff. So if you want to do that type of thing in the future, I will eventually offer it. More info in the future though. The rest of my content is probably going to be the usual quick play live commentary and fun builds and guides and stuff like that, so look forward. I know I had a bit of a break on the channel here, but I'm just trying to get back on track, and today's a great day to start. Thanks again for listening to the video. I wanted to get a vid out like this before I started streaming more frequently because this is going to contain a lot of frequently asked questions. Hope you have a great rest of your day.